Hello again, everyone. We're going to get started. It's right at 2 o'clock, and we are so excited to have everyone here joining us for this presentation today. My name is Beth Simos. I am the Vice President of Marketing here at Wayforth. Again, we'd like to welcome everyone to the first webinar in our winter series. This is Strategies for Organizing Photos, Videos, and Family Memorabilia. We are excited about the presentation and even more excited about our presenter. I think we're in for a real treat today. But before we get started, let's go through a bit of housekeeping items. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this webinar format, let us explain a few of the features that might be helpful for you today. We've muted everyone for the benefit of the presentation, and that just helps everyone hear clearly and there's no disruptions while our guest speaker is delivering her presentation. This means we won't be able to hear you if you talk, but please insert questions into the chat function. And we will be capturing those through that chat pane. And then Courtney, our marketing manager, will be monitoring the chat and she'll collect all of those questions. We will address all questions at the end of the presentation. So again, just remember that if you do have a question, it's likely there are several other members of the group who might have the same question. So you're doing everyone a favor when you do ask a question. This also goes for any technical help you may need. Type those questions as well in the chat, and Courtney will do the best to address those as soon as possible. We are recording this webinar for training purposes, but we will not be sending it out to anyone. We will share our contact information at the end of the presentation, and please reach out to us with any questions. We would love to hear from you. So to practice using the chat function, can everyone write in the chat where you are joining us from today? Thank you. I see someone from Maryland. I was just up in Maryland yesterday. Virginia. A lot of people joining us. Philly. Welcome, Philly. Florida. Welcome. Buffalo. Welcome. North Carolina. West Virginia, New Hampshire. Everyone, and we've got the East Coast covered from Maine to Florida now. Perfect. Michigan, North Carolina, Boston. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Looks like everyone is very comfortable with the chat function, so I think we are all good there. And again, please insert any questions you may have throughout the presentation, and we'll capture those and address those at the very end. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about Wayforth. For those of you who may not know much about Wayforth, we are the largest total home transition solution company in the country. We specialize in helping clients get excited about downsizing, putting their current house on the market, and moving to their new homes. We currently provide services from Maine to Florida, so we've got that covered with the group on here, and we can coordinate moves with partners across the country. Our leadership team has over 80 years of combined industry experience, and we are AARP's preferred provider for transition management solutions. We are COVID-19 certified and have implemented some of the most comprehensive health and safety protocols in the industry. We are changing the way people move, so we hope to be able to help you with your next move so you can experience the Wayforth difference. We offer a variety of solutions, and this will just give you a snapshot of everything that we offer that is customized and personalized for the individual's need. We cover everything in 3 categories, from move management, home sale management, and content management. Once again, we'll provide our contact information in the chat at the end. And in case you happen to have any additional questions after the webinar is over, please feel free to reach out to us and we will be happy to answer those questions for you. Now on to the exciting part of our presentation. Want to welcome our presenter today, Alison. We are happy to have her join us today and give us some additional information on how to prepare and provide inspiration to embark on your organizing and downsizing journey. Helping you move forward with a peace of mind is the focus that we have. And we want to know that, honoring your past by mindfully releasing items you no longer need. So I'd like to briefly introduce our presenter, as I said, Alison Pihl. She is the co-founder of Photographic Memories, a photo management company based outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Her company focuses on digitizing and preserving families' memories and photographic histories to share those stories with the next generation. She is an entrepreneur with a passion for creating inclusive cultures and previously co-founded Let's Move, the largest move management company in the US, which is now part of the Wayforth family. She is a member of the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers and helped create the standards for accreditation and certification in the move management industry. Alison completed her undergraduate degrees in electrical engineering and art history at Stanford University and earned her MBA from the Darden Graduate School of Business Administration at the University of Virginia. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Alison.
Great, thanks, Beth. I really want to welcome everybody here today. This is, for me, a really exciting topic.
Alison, oops,
yes.
might be muted.
Can you hear me now? So it doesn't say that I'm muted.
We're good. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Great. So I just wanted to welcome everybody here because to me, this is a really exciting topic. As Beth said in the introduction, I was part of a move management company. So I spent about 15 years in move management working with people for whom their photos ended up being their very last decision that they were making. And so very often their photos ended up in storage as they were going through their downsizing process. So I'm really excited to be now working in the field of photo management and to be helping people go through their photos, their videos, and their memorabilia, and to work on it in a proactive way. Our whole mission with my new company, Photographic Memories, is really to help people tell their story because that's what photos are about. We all have lots and lots of photos of, wonderful trips, but really it's about telling your story. So I just want to start with the idea that if you are overwhelmed by your photos, please know you are not alone. Almost everyone that I talk to as I'm going through and meeting with people about their photos and getting organized with their photos says, gosh, I've got print photos, I've got videos, I've got digital photos, and I just don't know what to do with it. And I'm very typical of that. My own story is that my mom was the person in the family who collected the photos and also the stories that went with them. And so when she passed away, I inherited 8 boxes of photos and memorabilia, letters, family Bibles, the whole bit, right? And suddenly was faced with going through that. And that is very, very typical as to how this happens. So please don't ever feel that you're alone, and there are lots of resources out there. One of the things I do want to mention is that I will be at the end providing some resources on my last slide. So I'm going to go through a lot of information, but if you don't capture it all, I will have some really great resources for you at that time. Okay, so let's start to dig in. Anytime you're going to organize really anything, but photos especially, you want to start at the end and you want to visualize what your end goal is going to be. So people have lots of different ideas of what they want to do with their photos. For some people who are really into genealogy, preservation and capturing those really old photos is important. For some people, it's just simply digitizing some of their family history. A lot of us have, either for ourselves or for our children, this kind of split between print photos and digital photos, and we'd like to be able to have them all in one place. One of the newest things that people are doing is creating either a family website. So if you have a family that's spread across the whole country, you can have one website that everybody shares photos, or they're using the digital frames, which have come a long way. And now digital frames actually will allow your family to connect so that you're all seeing and sharing the same photos. So all of these options are out there. And you're going to want to think about what your end goal is. It matters because it will make a difference in how you approach not just organizing the photos, but really the scanning and digitizing process. Okay, so you figured out your end goal, you sort of have an idea of what you want to do. Now you need to think about, what do I have that I want to preserve? And this is a big list. Right? We all have print photos. For myself, I have print photos from the family that go back to the 1880s. So I have some that are very fragile, and then I have all of the standard 4x6s from my own kids' history. So photos can be preserved. Slides and negatives can be preserved. You know, if you've got those big carousels of slides, we can work with those. VHS and camcorder tapes are particularly important, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And a lot of families have the Super 8, the reel-to-reel, all of those types of things. So all of these things are worth considering. I also would argue that you might want to look at some things like letters. You know, sometimes you find love letters between your grandparents, something that's interesting. And so you want to think about paperwork, not from the viewpoint of the business or legal side of it, but just from the family history side of it. So you want to think about everything that you have that you might want to preserve. Your next step is really going to be same steps that you would have in any organizing project, and that is gather it all together in one place. That way you know what you're up against. So if you have photos spread all over your house, maybe tucked in closets, some in the basement, you're going to have things that are in frames around your house. You know, you want to gather all of those together, and you want to gather them in one location. Preferably, that's a location that you can leave them as is, so that as you're working, you're not having to put them away. But so, you know, often a dining room table or an office space is a great place to set up to do your photo organizing. You really do need to be able to spread things out. So you've got your place to work, and then you're going to want to get your tools together. I'm going to go through what those tools are and what's important there. And then if you're finding that you're struggling with the idea of actually getting going, you know, a couple of the tips for any organizing project, again, any downsizing, set an appointment on your calendar. And if you're finding that even that's not working, then get somebody to help you, get a buddy to help you, someone to have some accountability. Okay, so let's talk about where all these photos are. A lot of us have photos in the photo boxes. We may have them in bins, but you also want to think about albums. It's going to be important to get photos out of albums. I'll talk a little bit about why. And then frames. So we don't think about it, but you've taken all your best pictures and you've put them in frames in there around your house. As you're going through and organizing and particularly scanning those things, you don't want to forget these most important photos that are in your frames. Some of the other places that you might find interesting information and also hints as to who's in photos or the timeline of photos are going to be found in things like letters and documents. Those are going to be tucked into, you know, maybe filing cabinets, maybe storage boxes. I personally found a lot of information tucked into family Bibles and hymnals. I come from a family of musicians, and so a lot of things were tucked into music books. So you're going to want to think about where is all of that information that's going to help you date and timeline your photos. course, audio tapes can be important. Sometimes they're actual tapes of people in your family talking and you'd like to preserve that. And sometimes they're things like a play or a concert or something like that, and you'd like to preserve that as well. And then we get to the hardest part, really, which is the digital photos. Because technology has changed so much over the time period that we have been taking digital photos. Really, we only started taking digital photos maybe 15 to 20 years ago. And yet in that time, we've gone from floppy disks to CDs to now it's all on our phone, it's on a flash drive. And every time we go through a technology change like that, we kind of lose the digital photos that are on the old technology. So you really want to think about, where have I put all of these different digital photos? Okay, so you've got everything gathered up together. First and foremost, if you can do it, do a backup. So back up anything that you've got that's electronic. And then even before your print photos, you want to tackle the videos. And that is because videos deteriorate. Film and videos deteriorate so much more rapidly than your print photos do. The videos will get edging, they'll start to lose their color, really somewhere around the 20 to 25 year mark. Of course, that's going to depend upon how they were stored. So if they were stored in a living space in your home, they're going to be in better shape. If they were in a basement or an attic that's got more moisture, they're going to be in tougher shape. So make sure you get a backup of all of your electronic photos, digital photos, and also your videos. One of the things that I really want to point out here is to understand the difference between online storage or cloud storage and online or cloud syncing. A lot of us have Apple devices now, and we're using iCloud, which is a wonderful tool to make sure that you have your photos across all of your devices. So it's on your computer, same things on your phone, same things on your tablet. However, iCloud is syncing, which means if you delete a photo on your phone, it's deleted everywhere. So as you're thinking about your cloud backup or backing up your photos, you want to make sure you understand that whatever you're choosing is a true backup and not syncing. That way, if you lose something, you can go to that backup and get that. The tools that you're going to need are very simple, not expensive, and they're really all available on Amazon. So you're going to want either cotton or nitrile gloves. And the reason is that the oil in our fingertips, believe it or not, is getting onto our photos. You may not see it as you're handling your photos, but where you will see it is when you go to scan that photo. It's going to show up. And we had a photo from our own collection, our own family collection that we scanned, and it had these hideous red marks across it. Couldn't figure it out. Turned out it was all of the fingerprints from handling that photo. So you definitely will see it. You want the gloves. You want some photo-safe pencils. And the reason is that as you start to organize, the pencils give you the ability to just write on the back of that photo very safely who that person is or what timeline it is, so you can, as you're finding clues, write them down. You want index cards for sorting, and I'll talk about the sorting process in a minute, but you want to make sure that you're not using Post-it notes for sorting. And the reason is, I know we use Post-it notes for a lot of other downsizing options, or projects, but when you're using photos, that sticky part of the Post-it note can actually destroy or rip off the photo itself. So you really want to use just plain old white index cards as you're sorting. You'll need some photo boxes, of course, that you're going to sort into. And then you want something to clean your photos. Old photos get dusty, they get dirt on them. So one of the things, especially if you're using slides, but also for photos, one of the things that's really great to use are one of these little blowers. And this little picture here on the slide that looks like a rocket ship, that's just a dust blower. Very easy, squeeze the ball of it and it blows dust off of photos and slides. So you want that, or you want a static free brush. And then if you're doing your own scanning, you also will need electronic wipes and microfiber cloths in order to clean your scanner, because your scanner needs to be cleaned as you're going through. Okay, so very basic tools, all available easily through a Target, a Walmart, or an Amazon for you to get these. All right, so let's talk about what you're going to keep. This is one of the hardest parts of photo organizing, is deciding what to keep, and even harder, deciding what to get rid of. I think we have an emotional connection to photos, even when we don't know who it is in those photos. As you're going through and you know it's a family photo and you think, you really should know who this person is, and you become emotionally attached to them. The reality is you don't need all the photos you have, and it's okay, I give you permission, to get rid of photos when you don't recognize anybody in the photo. It's really going to be okay. The way to sort your photos, and you want to do this before you even timeline them, right? You're going to want to sort them into A, B, C categories. So A is A for album. It's easy to remember. A for album. These are your best photos. Your super cute photos. You know who's in them. You love them. You want to consider in this also the photos that are in the frames on your walls. Then your B photos. These are the photos that you stick into those photo boxes. You want to keep them. You like them. They have a person in them probably, or they have beautiful scenery. And so you're going to want to keep those as well. You might not scan all of them, but you're going to probably want to keep those B photos. I've given you here a couple of examples of an A photo and a B photo, so you get an understanding of what I'm talking about. The A photo, super cute, two little kids. It's me and my brother in our best 60s finery. So you're going to want to keep that kind of photo, right? It tells a story. It's cute. We know who's in it. That's an A photo. The B photo, nice photo. It's got a person in it. There's nothing wrong with this photo. It tells a little bit of a story. It may be the only photo you have of the person, or it may be part of a trip narrative or a narrative of that person's life. So you're going to want to save those photos as well. Okay, let's talk about the C photos. I'm going to give you an example here. These are the C photos. So what you're seeing here is unique. You can tell by the green color. These are all unique photos from a whale watching trip. I don't know if any of you guys have been on a whale watching trip. I know I have. And very often the picture that you take is after the whale has gone back under the water. So you're getting tons of photos of just the ocean. Beautiful ocean, but how many photos do we need from this trip? Probably one to tell the story that we couldn't catch the whale. We just saw the ocean. These are the photos that you want to start to think about getting rid of, because as you're downsizing your photos and you're trying to get things into a smaller quantity, something that you're comfortable storing in your home, you're going to want to get rid of these. You'll also find, as you get going on this, duplicates. I don't know if you guys all remember, but starting in sort of the maybe mid-80s, every time you went and got photos printed, you got a duplicate set, which means that you just automatically have twice as many photos from that time period as you need. So you're going to want to really think it through. I think this also is a great time to think about, what photos am I going to take going forward? Because this really gives you some pause, right? A lot of times we'll go on trips and we'll take tons of photos of beautiful scenery or interesting architecture, that sort of thing. But the reality is when you go back to look at your photos, you care about the ones that have the people in them for the most part. Yeah, you're going to want to keep some scenery. You're going to have some, really cool artsy photos maybe. But the reality is most of what you want are the photos with the people. We're in a world where we take so many digital photos right now because it's so easy with that phone to just take photos that you're going to want to start to think about going forward. Is this a photo I want to keep? Okay, so enough about C photos. Let's move on. Let's talk about how you're going to organize your photos. Pretty straightforward for most people. Most people are going to want to combine timeline. So they're going to want to go just straight old, by the years, right? They want to do a timeline. And then they might, within that timeline, do events. And by that, I mean things like birthdays and holidays or particular trips. So you might organize around that. And sometimes you want to go a little bit off and you want to maybe pull all the photos of a particular person because you want to tell their life story, or there's some subject that you're looking to document. So it might be the story of a special place. I know families who have maybe a second home or they have an annual vacation that they do, they're going to want to document that. But most of all, people are doing it by timeline. So as you're starting to sort these photos and you're looking at timeline, if you've got a lot of photos that you don't necessarily know timing or you don't know the people in them, one of the quick ways to sort is to start first by sorting by decade. So you just sort by decade, all of the 1930s, the 1940s, and you just make a big pile. That allows you to do your first cut of organizing, and then you go into each of those decades and you'll go and do a fine tuning of it. So that's a way to get started with the timeline. If you've got a lot of photos that you don't really know who they are or what they're about, start with that sorting by decade. Also really works if you have photos that aren't organized in any way at all, but have all just been kind of thrown in together. Start that first sort by decade. Okay, a few other tips for sorting that can be really helpful. Before you even get to the sorting part of it, sit with your family if you can. If you've got somebody else outside of the family, your immediate family who might have a better memory or longer memory, get them on the phone and start with a family tree and a timeline of key events. This is particularly important if you are organizing photos that go back quite a ways. So for example, when we worked with a client who she was clearing out her mom's home, she just put everything into boxes and sent it to us. We asked her to outline the key events of her mom's life. So where she had grown up, the different locations, when she had moved, when she had graduated high school and college. And so by doing that, that allowed us to go through and really start to sort by this timeline. Okay, so you want to start with your family tree and your key event timeline. And then, as I said, if you've got a lot of photos, do a first brush by decade and then go in and do year by year. A lot of different tips if you are working with old photos and you're not quite sure when they're from. Look for dates front and back on those photos. A lot of times the dates kind of move around depending upon when they were printed. Sometimes they'll be right on the front, sometimes they'll be on the back. Sometimes they're in a code and you can kind of figure it out. Those are the hardest ones. And then look at hair and clothing styles. Look at cars, license plate styles, look at cars themselves. Count birthday candles. If you're looking at somebody's birthday, count how many candles are on the cake. These are all little clues as to where your photos are going to fit into the timeline. If all else fails, flip all the photos over and sort by the backs and edges. Because when you look at what's printed on the back and you look at the edges and the size of those photos, very much, most of the time, you're going to sort into like piles, and it's going to turn out that those photos all went together because they were all developed at the same time. This is really helpful when you're sorting across multiple decades too. Really, really helpful to just flip them over and sort by the backs and the edges. Okay, and at the end, I'm going to give a reference to a really great blog post that has a lot more tips, lots of details about how to figure out when a photo is from. Okay, one of the other cute tricks for sorting your photos is to look at the logos. So I've given you here just some examples of Kodak and how their logo has changed over the years. But you can also find, you might find the photography studio on a photo that will tell you, you can look up online when that studio was in business, and that'll give you an idea of when that photo came from. Fujifilm has a similar thing to Kodak, Fuji being here in the US, mostly in the sort of late 70s, 80s timeframe. And the logo gives you an idea. Okay, I know it's got to be in the 1960s because this is what the logo looks like. Okay, so all of these things are tricks for as you're sorting out and trying to put things in timeline. How close you get the timeline is really up to you. Some people will just say, you know what, just put it in the 1930s and I'm fine with that. And other people really want to get the storyline going, and so they'll want to go into more detail. Totally up to you. Either way is right. Okay, so you've got all your photos sorted out. You've figured out that you want to do them by timeline, by event within the timeline. You've kind of got it all organized into some kind of time that it's separated out by your index cards. Now it's time to start scanning the photos. And this is again back to the A, B, C photos. So at this point, you've set your C photos aside. You're not going to scan them. You're very likely going to just throw those away. You're going to scan your A photos, and then the choices start to become in the B photos. How many of those B photos do you want to scan? The one piece of advice that I would give you on the scanning is that you don't want to overwhelm yourself with digital photos. So if you have 10,000 print photos and you scan them all, now all of a sudden you've got 10,000 digital photos. Probably not what you wanted. So really focus in on those photos that are the A photos. They're good. They tell a story. You know who's in them. They're interesting photos to you. Those are the ones you're going to want to digitize because those are the ones that you're going to go back to and use. Okay, how to scan them. The key here is to scan at enough resolution so that if you go and want to make an enlargement of the photo, you still will have the detail and the focus of that photo. And that's why I said, think about your end goal when you first start. Because if one of your end goals is to create a gallery wall, and on that gallery wall you want, 11 by 17 type photos, you're going to want to scan at a higher resolution, maybe even than what I'm suggesting here. You will see in the scanning world, you'll see this PPI, which is pixels per inch. You'll see that interchanged with DPI, which is dots per inch. Basically the same thing. It's a digital resolution. And so you're going to want to make sure that your photos are scanned at 600 PPI or 600 DPI. The reason for that is that they are printed at 300. And so by scanning at 600, you've ensured that you can make an enlargement of that photo. Some of the other things that you're going to want to do as photos are being scanned is to add keywords to them so that they become searchable. And then facial recognition is really coming a long way. Most software that you're using for organizing digital photos has some kind of facial recognition in it. You do have to train it a little bit, but it's really helpful in grouping and being able to then search by person. And then something called metadata. You want to make sure that that gets added in if it's not already there. When you're scanning, you're going to have to add it in, and that's the time and date and the location. And again, some of these photos you'll know exactly, and other photos you're just kind of taking a guess. Okay, so if you decide to scan at home, which some people really want to do that, they want to get involved in the whole process. Other people want to send it out to somebody else. So if you decide you're going to scan at home, you really want to have a photo scanner. You could use your all-in-one printer or scanner that you have at home, but there are some key differences with a photo scanner. One of them is that they will adjust to the surface of the photo. So if you have one photo that's got a shiny reflective surface and you've got another photo that has a matte surface, you're still going to get a good quality on both of those scans. You want to make sure it has the minimum of the 1200 DPI or 1200 PPI setting so that you can scan at enough resolution to enlarge. And then this comes back to your tools. You want to clean your photos before scanning. You want to clean your photos, and every 30 to 50 photos, you want to clean that scanner. The reason is that dust will get onto the scanner glass or it will be on the photo, and then that will show up in the scan. Now, all of a sudden, you're having to repair or restore a photo. Okay, so I'm going to give you, just want to show you camera scanning. This really is something I wouldn't recommend doing at home. It takes a lot of equipment and some training. It is something that if you are, if you have really historical photos and you really want to preserve something, you want to look for somebody who does camera scanning. You get a higher resolution, you get more detail. It's a really nice way to preserve historically important photos. Okay, so you've scanned your photos. How are you going to store them now? Couple of things. Make sure you get archival storage boxes. So they're often referred to as acid-free. That will stop the deterioration of your photos. You also want to get photos out of albums. All of those albums that we carefully put our photos into that have the plastic sheets covering them, those are all damaging our photos. And they're hard to get out after they've been in there for 20, 30 years, but it's worth taking the time to get the photos out of the albums and stop the deterioration. You want to store your photos in a climate controlled area. So really the living spaces of your home, not your basement, if it's humid, not your attic. And then the recommended backup for photos is 3-2-1. So again, easy to remember, like ABC, 3-2-1, 3 backups on 2 different types of media. So if you're keeping your print photos and you've got them scanned, there you go. Those are your 2 types of media. 1 stored offsite. So if you are using a cloud service to back up your photos, that's your offsite. So typically people have a print photo, something on their computer, the digital on their computer, and then a cloud storage is typically how people do that. Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly about digital restoration just so that you understand what's available to you. This is something, if you want to take on learning Adobe Photoshop, this is something you can do yourself, or you can use a photo manager or a conservator to do this. If you have print photos that are so damaged that they need physical restoration, you actually do need a conservator. Otherwise, for these sort of minor to major touch-ups, a photo manager can do this for you in Adobe Photoshop. And let me give you some examples of this. This is a typical 1950-ish Kodachrome picture. So Kodachrome has been notorious over the years for turning this lovely sort of yellowish orange color. In restoration, that color can be removed and the photo can start to look like it did originally. Okay, here's another. This is a sort of a middle of the road restoration where there are some scratches across the photo, and they're in locations that are pretty easy to fix. So again, in Photoshop, this can be restored so that it looks, so you remove the scratches. And then finally, this is actually a really tough restoration. And the reason is that the scratches and tears are across the little girl's face. And so places like that, face, arm, that sort of thing, much harder to restore. So this is something where you probably do want to get a professional involved when you're dealing with this kind of restoration. But it's absolutely possible, and then you've got a nice photo that you can use. Okay, once you have all of your photos scanned and you've got them digitally, ready to go, we need to talk about how to organize those. And let me tell you, organizing digital photos is an entire webinar in and of itself. So you want to think about just some basic tips. You want to think about, what do you use today? Are you a family that's Mac only? Are you a family that's split between Macs and PCs? That'll make a difference. Do you already have an Amazon account or a Google account? Because they have photo storage and photo management software available, and that might be a great place to do your cloud storage. So you just kind of want to think about that, and then you want to think about, what features do I want online? Do I just want to back them up, in which case I can just upload all the photos, or do I actually want one of these family websites? So there's a lot more to this. The key thing I want you to take away from your digital photos is that as you're working with these services, understand your recurring costs. Most of them are done on a subscription basis. And once you load the photos up, you're going to be paying that every month. So you want to really understand what it is. You want to understand ownership and privacy issues, because some of these services do say in the agreement that they have the right to use your photos in their marketing. So if that is upsetting to you, you want to make sure you know that. Okay. If you really get into this and you're doing your own scanning and you want to do your own metadata, you want to add facial recognition, the most easy to use and popular software is Adobe Lightroom, and it's available, of course, from Adobe on a subscription basis again, but this is what most photo managers and professional photographers use to organize their digital photos. So I just mentioned it. If you really want to go down the road, this is the place to go. Okay, then think about how you're going to share your story. I talked about the family website, and I think I actually talked about all of the online things. A lot of people are doing printed books. So they're doing the digital books. If you think about like Snapfish or MPix or one of those places where you can load up your photos and create a book, and then you can print one or multiple copies. That's a really great way to tell a specific story. And so as for an example, we've done books where we did the candids of somebody's wedding. It's not the nice, pretty professional wedding album. It's just the candid shots. We've also done the story of their children's growing up, and every kid got a copy of it. So lots of different ways to use these photo books. You still have a physical photo that you're using, but the book tells a story. Okay, let me dive a little bit into videos. I spent a lot of time on photos because, one, that's a lot of what we have, and two, that's a place where you can really dig in. Videos are harder because you have to have the equipment. You have to have the original equipment to digitize a video, which means you have to have a VHS player or a camcorder that still works. So this is a place where I would recommend that if you don't have that equipment, you go to a professional, and there are professional people who will do the conversion for you. You will get a flash drive, and you'll be able to play it on a computer or a TV. Okay. And then memorabilia. As you're going through, particularly if you're downsizing and you've got things like plaques, or you've got trophies, or just various things from trips that you've gathered, the things that you want to keep you're going to want to put in archival storage boxes. And again, that's that acid-free, so that it's not continuing to deteriorate from anything that's outgassing of a plastic bin. So you want archival storage boxes. But one of the great ways to really downsize is to take photos of these things. And I would recommend one of the nicest ways to do it is to use a light box. So you'll see on this slide I'm showing you in the bottom corner a light box. It's basically a fabric box that has lighting in it so that the item that you put in is beautifully lit, and you just hold up the camera and take pictures of it, and you can take it from all different angles. So when you are considering memorabilia, think about what things do I really want to hold on to, and what things do I want to let go, but I would like to have photos of. And then your children's artwork, your artwork, that is easy to scan because it's typically flat, and so that can just be scanned. Okay, so summary, couple of different options here for you. One, if you want to go down the do-it-yourself path, kind of giving you the summary of how you do it, gathering your photos, choosing what you're going to scan, putting them in a timeline. You can scan them at home, or you can do the organization and then send them somewhere to be scanned. Okay, getting them into archival boxes and then merging those scans into your digital photo platform so that all of a sudden those digital photos are all available to you to use. And then figuring out how you're going to share them. So that's kind of the DIY path. There is this industry called photo management. That's what I do. If you decide you don't want to do it all yourself, or you want to do some and you want some support, a photo manager is a good way to go. So there's a national association called the Photo Managers. Photomanagers.com is where you find it. What you'll want to do is think about what your budget is and how much involvement you want. And we've seen everything from people who just turn the whole thing over and say, I don't want to deal with any of it, to people who are doing step by step and we're helping them along the way. Okay, and a photo manager will give you an estimate and a project plan so that you can make those decisions. So as I promised at the beginning, here are some resources for you. I really would recommend, if you decide to do this yourself, that you look at the photomanagers.com. They have some free classes, they have great blogs, they have a lot of information for you if you're going to go down this path by yourself. The book Photo Organizing Made Easy is a great recap of the style of organizing that I just went through. And then the blog, The Ultimate Guide to Dating Your Family Photos. If, like me, you have a lot of really old family photos, that is a great way to give yourself some clues as to how to date the photos. Okay. So this is my company, Photographic Memories, and at this point, I'm ready to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison, for that terrific presentation. We were also looking forward to the presentation. You did not disappoint us. Lots of great information and inspiration to motivate all of us to simplify our lives. And as Allison just said, we'd like to open it up to questions. I know we've had a couple of emailed in questions, some questions in the chat box. So Courtney, do you have any questions that were asked that we haven't addressed yet?
Yes, we had a few come through via email. The first one is, if I have a photo album that I want to keep, what are my options?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So if you have a photo album and you want to reproduce it, that can be done depending upon the condition that it's in and whether it can be taken apart. It can either be scanned on a photo scanner, or it can be, and it needs to be one of those large flatbed ones, or it can be camera scanned. Either of those two options will work. And then the album can actually just be reproduced, reprinted so that you can share it with other people. Or what I've run into is albums that are so moldy that we've recreated the album in a new photo book format. And then we've gotten rid of the original because it was so moldy.
Awesome. Another question that came through was, how do I dispose of the photos that I'm not keeping?
Yeah, this is a tough one for people to hear because I think we all would like to recycle and reuse and all of that. Old photos, unfortunately, end up going into the trash. There is not, for most of them, there is not an option to recycle them. They have plastics, they have chemicals in them, and they don't do well in our recycling. So they do, unfortunately, just go into landfill.
Okay. And then we had one just come through the chat. Are creative memories and other archival quality products as safe as they claim?
They are actually, yes, they are. Creative Memories is one of the few companies that sort of right from the get-go was doing archival quality. The albums that we need to worry about are the ones that have plastic covers in them or that have that glue that we stuck the photos to. Those are really doing damage to the photos. Those are the albums you want to get things out of. But Creative Memories, if you've got those are good to go.
All right. And someone is actually asking if you could go back one slide to the resources slide, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to. These are all the companies on the archival storage side and the cloud storage options. These are all companies that the Photo Managers Association works with as partners. And so they're vetted really by photo managers across the country. We've all used them.
Fantastic. And that wraps up the questions that we received. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to ask Alison, I'll also put her email in the chat. So if you think of a question later, I'm sure Alison wouldn't mind speaking with you further.
That would be terrific. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for your time. This is such a important topic.
It is very important. And thank you, Alison, for spending time with us this afternoon. It was very informative. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Please take note of the contact information and how to receive your digital goodie bag of valuable educational information, and it's waiting for you. You will also receive an email shortly with this information. And again, don't hesitate to contact us at Wayforth. If you think of any questions after this webinar, or feel free to reach out directly to Alison. And just a quick reminder that this concludes our presentation for today, but we hope to see you at our second webinar in this winter series titled Maximizing Your Closet Space. As we all know, that is a key space where we can start with downsizing, decluttering, and it's really important to understand some of the process for organizing your closet so that you make the most of that area, which is the area we have the least of, it seems like these days. The link to the registration landing page is in the chat box, and that will be included in our follow-up email as well. Again, please contact us if you have any further questions, and thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Alison.
Thanks.